This edition of Timeline presents Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie. The birth of beloved writer Laura Ingalls Wilder is situated on the timeline near the middle of the 19th century in 1867. To put this in perspective, Wisconsin became an American state in 1848 and the Spanish-American War was fought in 1898. Laura Ingalls Wilder was an American author, most notable as the creator of the Little House on the Prairie books, written for kids and based on her childhood in a frontier settler family. A popular 1970s television series was loosely based on the Little House novels, starring Melissa Gilbert as Laura and Michael Landon as her father, Charles. Throughout this presentation, we shall visit the places where Laura Ingalls Wilder lived. Timeline will mark each location on a simple map that is easy to comprehend and fun to replicate for school projects. Laura was born to Charles and Caroline Ingalls, 7 miles north of the village of Pepin in the Big Woods region of Wisconsin. She was the second of 5 children, following Mary, who went blind in her teens, and 3 younger siblings, Carrie, Freddie, and Grace. Life in Wisconsin formed the basis of her first book, Little House in the Big Woods. Her birth site is commemorated by a replica log cabin called the Little House Wayside. Before Laura was 2 years old, the Ingalls family moved from the Big Woods. They stopped in Rothville, Missouri, and settled in Kansas Indian country on the Osage Reservation near what is now Independence. Her younger sister Carrie was born there. Those experiences formed the basis for her book, Little House on the Prairie. In 1871, they left Kansas and returned to Wisconsin, where they lived for the next 4 years. When Laura was about 7, Charles led them to Lake City, Minnesota, and then to an area near Walnut Grove where they settled on the banks of Plum Creek, as described in her novel. They lived for a time with relatives near South Troy, where Laura's little brother was born and died only 9 months later. They next moved to Burr Oak, Iowa in 1876, where they helped operate a hotel. Laura's youngest sibling, Grace, was born there in 1877. They moved from Burr Oak back to Walnut Grove, where Charles worked as the town butcher and served as Justice of the Peace. He then accepted a railroad job in the spring of 1879, which took him to Eastern Dakota Territory, where the family joined him that fall. Laura did not write about her time in Burr Oak, but skipped directly to Dakota Territory, as described in her next book, By the Shores of Silver Lake. After spending a mild winter in the surveyor's house, a homestead in De Smet, South Dakota became their new family home, with Charles, Caroline, and Mary remaining there for the rest of their lives. The following winter, one of the most severe on record in the Dakotas, was later portrayed by Laura in her book, The Long Winter. Once the family was settled in De Smet, Laura attended school and made many friends. In 1882, 2 months before her 16th birthday, Laura accepted her first teaching position in a one-room schoolhouse and worked for the local dressmaker. Laura's schooling and teaching career ended in 1885 when she married the bachelor farmer Almanzo Wilder, whom she affectionately called Manly. His nickname for her was Bess, inspired by her middle name of Elizabeth. Laura was 18 when she married, and Almanzo was 10 years older. He had achieved a degree of success on his farm, and his prospects seemed bright. This period of their life is well related in the books Little Town on the Prairie and These Happy Golden Years. Almanzo's childhood is documented in Laura's second book, Farmer Boy. In 1886, Laura gave birth to her first child, Rose, and a few years later to a son who died before he was named. The son was buried at De Smet Cemetery. On the grave mark, the unnamed child was simply remembered as baby son of A.J. Wilder. Their first few years of marriage were often difficult, as described in Laura's book, The First 4 Years. Complications from a life-threatening illness left Almanzo partially paralyzed and in need of a cane to walk for the remainder of his life. Around 1890, they left De Smet for Minnesota and spent a year resting at Almanzo's parents' prosperous farm in Spring Valley before moving briefly to the town of Westville in the northern panhandle of Florida. They sought Florida's climate to improve Almanzo's health, but felt out of place and were not happy. In 1892, they returned to De Smet and bought a small house. 2 years later, the Wilder family moved to Mansfield, Missouri, and bought an undeveloped property just outside town. They named the place Rocky Ridge Farm and moved into a small log cabin. They planted apple trees and earned income from wagon loads of firewood Almanzo sold to the townsfolk. At first, success came slowly. They left the farm when Almanzo's parents gave them a house in Mansfield, but in 1910 they sold the house and moved back to the farm. Over the next 20 years, they diversified Rocky Ridge Farm into a prosperous fruit, dairy, and poultry enterprise. In 1911, an invitation to submit an article to the Missouri Ruralist publication led to Laura's permanent position as a columnist and editor until the mid-1920s. Her topics ranged from home and family to national and world events. She also took a paid position with the local Farm Loan Association. While they were not wealthy during this period, the farming operation and Laura's income provided a stable living for the family. Rose was the only child of her parents to survive into adulthood. In 1909, she married Gillette Lane and became an accomplished woman with celebrated success as a journalist, travel writer, novelist, and libertarian political theorist. She also encouraged Laura to improve her writing skills. The hardships Laura experienced during the Great Depression, coupled with the death of her mother in 1924 and her sister Mary 4 years later, prompted Laura to begin preserving her memories in writing. Rose edited her mother's works and used her connections to secure the publishing of Laura's first book in 1932. After its success, Laura continued writing and collaborating with her daughter. 2 of Rose Wilder Lane's most successful novels were written at the same time as her mother's Little House children's series and basically retold Ingalls and Wilder family tales for adult readers. The Little House books, based on the Ingalls family's experiences on the American frontier, became an enduring record of early pioneering life of the 19th century. Since their initial publication in the 1930s and 40s, the novels have been continuously in print and translated into 40 languages. Various honors, recognition, huge amounts of fan mail, and other accolades were bestowed on Laura. The royalties from the sale of these books brought a steady and substantial income to Laura and Almanzo for the first time in their marriage. Laura remained on Rocky Ridge Farm after Almanzo's death in 1949. She became very ill in 1957 and died while sleeping at home, 3 days after her 90th birthday. Laura was buried beside her husband of over 60 years at the Mansfield Cemetery. Rose was buried next to her parents upon her death in 1968. Following Laura's death, Rocky Ridge Farmhouse became a popular museum that still draws thousands of visitors each year to Mansfield. This concludes our interesting look at Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie. We hope you have enjoyed this presentation and look forward to meeting you again soon along the timeline.